Recently, we heard about China's economy under mounting stress, bank run possibly. They arrested the guy for spreading rumors, as they said. Their housing bust, they're having issues with that. But this was all news in basically last week. And now all of a sudden people are catering to China after this whole Ukrainian thing where they got Ukraine to accept the IMF loan. The U.S. approved, $1 billion loan to them as well. You have this dollar hegemony under attack by export. I don't really believe in world reserve currencies or global governments or nation states with central banks and banks in general. So I can give really two craps about any of this. But this is how I'll lay out the beginning of this video, because that's where it's going to go, the theme. Which are these, quote, superpowers, Germany and China. And when you hear that, you're just like, wow, big armies. Not really. I mean, as far as armies and stuff, it's not really about that anymore. It's about economic power, using economic warfare. Obama in Europe. So a lot of traveling going on with the Chinese leader in Europe and Obama and everyone, the nuclear summit in Europe, and then, of course, no one's really talking about the TPP. That's something that hasn't been talked about at all. The trade treaty the U.S. and the EU are negotiating will be detrimental to Europeans. And there's Obama and Merkel, I guess, smooching or something. But so much of the prep work for the agreement is under negotiation. You guys have probably heard about all the TPP, but it's being done by the Transatlantic Business Council. Between them is member companies like ExxonMobil and Deutsche Bank. Basically, they say caused or contributed to ecological catastrophes, economic, quote, catastrophes and crisis, where they'll come in and loan a bunch of money to people. But it goes on here and it says that they were given the same task in '95 when they were effectively hired as economic advisors by the U.S. government and the EU. So some people think it's a corporate takeover. Technically, we already have a corporate takeover. It's probably just a merging consolidation of corporations. Chinese president begins a key Europe visit. This was March 22nd. And then, like we said, China's economy under mounting stress. European Union cozies up to China's relations with Russia sour from today, March 31st. So maybe all that stuff about China's economy wasn't really all that much. It was just hyped up by the West prior to his visit, China's visit, so that they can feel like they need them or something. I don't know, whatever. His host has pampered the head of state and 200-strong business entourage as the two economic blocs work towards a multi-billion-dollar free trade agreement. The world's second biggest economy is a strategic ally for the EU. China is pushing a multi-billion-dollar free trade agreement with Europe's $17 trillion economy, focusing on Germany, the most important partner within the EU. The next is the USA. And this is hilarious right here. Europe wants to keep a good rapport with China, even if that means disregarding previous complaints of human rights abuses. In return, the EU wants China to open up investment opportunities which will attract more foreign money to China. Keep the goods flowing. What better way than a new Silk Road, as they say, a rail link from China's factories to the heart of Europe. We heard recently about with the Ukraine I was covering, about a lot of it could have been supplying energy to Asia instead of Russia, and that was kind of a big deal. And apparently they want, they want more, or they want the cheap Chinese goods to continue to flow west as the main manufacturer of the world. It's the longest railway, covers 24,000 miles. It says here, en route from the Chinese megacity of Chongqing to basically a key commercial hub in western, Germany. The biggest challenge will be to boost traffic in both directions. It's not uncommon for these Chinese trains, which transport as many as 50 containers, to be full when they arrive in Germany, but empty when they return. They also say that rail is twice as fast as sea transport, and probably safer too. Remember, the Western backed rebels in Libya were trying to take control of the oil and send it to North Korea, the highest bidder, and they didn't like that, and puppet government there in Libya for the West The West actually stepped in, the U.S. Navy SEALs, and they seized the ship. So, because the government, the public government there, couldn't do it, and they fired a bunch of people and stuff. So, Iran oil exports to Asian buyers up 17%, says a report. Their four biggest buyers are China, India, Japan, and South Korea. Oil tanker was shot at in the Strait of Hormuz. Unknown assailants and a speedboat shot at a crude oil tanker as it sailed through the strait between Iran and Oman on Sunday. They repelled the attack with hoses, water hoses, and the tanker and crew are safe. I mentioned in a recent video about how Ukraine was a good example of what Clinton was referring to as energy diplomacy or energy foreign policy. Energy diversity. Polish Prime Minister calls on the EU, European Union, to form an energy union. You're going to continue to hear more of this talk. Some 40% of Russia's gas destined for Europe is shipped through the Ukraine. So it'll be the same thing. They'll just go from knocking out Russia as a competitor for as far as a monopoly goes for supplying gas to another type of monopoly. Ukrainians will be out there protesting, high gas prices. They'll already be entrenched in IMF loans and loans from the West, from the U.S. Germany and renewed push for EU treaty change. The finance minister said after the sham EU elections, the debate about treaty change will be back on the table. And further consolidation. They said here the improvements, institutional improvements, will be what? A monetary union, a joint finance and economic policy, corresponding institutions. He said he agrees with basically that the idea that the further Eurozone integration should not become a disadvantage for countries outside the Euro, and he's referring to the UK, Britain. Well, why is that? Because that's Rothschild's homeland. We all know what they're talking about when they say this, right? They could say whatever conservative or whatever crap they want to say. In Britain, the government, traditionally close to business or big business and huge banking interests, is concerned that the banking union in the Eurozone and further regulation of the financial system will impact London's financial powerhouse. So you don't hear a lot about this, but protest rallies held against the TPP. We were just talking about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But then there's the transatlantic trade, basically the transatlantic partnership as well. Anti-democratic agreements seek to increase corporate domination of basically their politics. Multinational corporations are about to strike a major blow to what limited democracy exists and to people's fundamental rights. This transatlantic trade agreement between the EU and the United States. Very little is known to the general public about what it actually is, but the gist is it makes the subordination of the capitalist state to corporate interests even more stark and evident. Back to this, hundreds attended a protest in, Auckland, I think, and different parts of New Zealand against this free trade deal. Leaked version of the agreement have shown countries pushing for exemptions to existing global environmental treaties. They say that they basically want to have the opportunity to scrutinize and critique it before it's signed. Food Workers Union said that it was in the interest of multinational corporations and would not improve low-paid or low-wage workers' lives. In Greece, Greek police banned protests during EU meetings. Demonstrators will be banned from rallying or marching in the center of the capital, including around the parliament. They've implemented bans before when the German finance minister and Angela Merkel from Germany visited. Lastly, anti-European sentiment has risen in Greece after 6 years of a deep recession that many blame the government and its European Union and the IMF lenders for exacerbating with tax hikes and spending cuts. And this is sentiment like the UKIP, Farage and them, and in France. These people, these globalists, they know this, and so they're playing off nationalist sentiment, which is exactly what we saw in Ukraine. And now they just killed their leader, they protested, now they want to shut down whoever it was. They're people that helped them into power. Basically these rich Western oligarchs that kicked out the Eastern Russian oligarchs. The current births, the other thing is immigration. The current births in France have actually been 1 in 3 are actually non-ethnic or indigenous French. So they're also a little concerned about that, but the economy first and immigration second. Look who was protesting. Clashes, right? Oh, it's the immigrants protesting. So the other thing to notice is that there's a rise in nationalism because it's rejection of globalism. It doesn't mean that nationalism is the answer. A lot of people think like that, and I don't. I mean, you know me. I would prefer no government at all, and that's just me personally. But if I understand what they're doing and the games that they're playing off the different sentiments. So when I say there's probably a reason why Golden Dawn members were basically neutralized, was probably because they were going to do something about the anti-austerity measures because they were also gaining a lot of support by regular people. Doesn't mean I condone Golden Dawn as a party or anything. I'm just saying that may be why they were taken down. Whereas in Ukraine, these, quote, neo-Nazis, they're joining the EU and taking on IMF loans. It's like, what the hell? That's not being very looking out for your national sovereignty. Which leads me to believe that they aren't in charge there. So Irish MP slams the West for supporting right-wing semi-fascist forces in Ukraine. Well, why would you be surprised, right? Xenophobic, semi-fascist elements in the Kiev's new government. Well, they're not going to win. They're already getting purged, right, by this puppet government. Unelected government that actually helped impose IMF austerity. So then you have this. Why would you be so surprised that they would, support neo-Nazis, right? Obama weighs new aid for the terrorists in Syria. So joint military plans with the Saudis. So yeah, Obama ignores Saudi human rights record in meeting with King Abdullah the 31st when he visited him. Ignored that. He ignores the fact that Saudi Arabia is the biggest contributor to Al-Qaeda. He ignores this, right? What's happening in Egypt. Sentenced Morsi supporters to death. So, facing execution. That he's what? Oh, he's going to run for president now after he carried out a purge. He ignored Turkey's, right? He supports Turkey because Turkey supports the Al-Qaeda and the terrorists inside Syria to destabilize that area and country as well. Didn't say anything about freedom of speech when they banned YouTube videos or YouTube and Twitter and stuff. Nothing about that. Erdogan vows his own little purge of enemies after he won. So he's going to settle a score with the political opponents who try to topple him by publishing damaging leaks. But investors got what they wanted, right? Investors' trust in Turkey grows, says market analysis. They like the results of the election. Why would the Irish Prime Minister be surprised that the West is backing, quote, neo-Nazis? Well, fascists. Well, they got a puppet regime in Afghanistan, right? And then they also do business with the Taliban. So every time the elections come, like in Iraq, you see all this violence. It's probably the West funding the terrorists to carry out whatever they want against this illegitimate government, because it is. And then what? And then they play into the hands of that same puppet government that's backed by the people who are funding them to carry out the violence. So it legitimizes it. Oh, they don't like democracy, right? Gunfight near Afghan election headquarters. All the militants are dead. Also in the theme of anti-globalism, European separatists hold massive rally in Brussels. Japan and the U.S. are going to create a new defense body, I think, to keep China in check, even though I think that all of their strings are being pulled by the same people. But I also think that they're competing for control of this global system, Russia and the U.S., and even China. Norway's former prime minister was elected the new NATO head, the head of NATO. He says he wants to boost defense budget. It's funny, we were just talking about this 3 or 4 days ago. Obama wants a NATO military buildup in Eastern Europe. He said that there should be a regular NATO presence in Eastern Europe, and Germany seeks to expand military deployments in Eastern Europe. They see Ukraine as a chance to increase interventionist role. But many polls, including the one I covered last week with the U.S., showing the public strongly opposed to overseas adventures. Speaking of polls, a poll shows support for military union with Sweden for Finland. Because of the thing in Ukraine, they've also thought about joining NATO. As a Russian platoon is withdrawing from Ukrainian border, top NATO commander cuts short his U.S. visit, says that has to do with Russian troops. Latvia and Estonia is asking NATO for boots on the ground. In the name of Crimea and the Ukraine situation, U.S. increases security funding to Moldova. Yeah, Crimea and Ukraine has been used as a catch-all excuse for officials across the region to try to push their own pet agendas on the international community. Thank you.